Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you. Today we're taking a break from Alice. Alice thanks all of you advocates out there who kept encouraging me to move on with it. So she's feeling pretty good. I want today to think about doing something with these scraps that I had left over from cutting curves for another project. And I have a couple of things in mind. It gets pretty narrow in spots, so I don't know how that's going to go, but I do have some other pieces that are doable, and I have a project in mind. But you ever have that picture in your head of a quilt or a design and then it just never quite works out that way? We're familiar with that on this channel. So I'm going to start with these two, and I do want to use as much of this as I can. Now this will probably all get taken up in a seam, but I think that might be all right. It may be, no, I think I want to use these as separate pieces. So I will cut curves that will fit this particular curve. And I will probably cheat and do a narrow seam on either side of this. And I want to introduce some color in because that's who I am. So the first thing, my plan is to add narrow strips of color. And then I think I also want some coming through, if not here, then the piece that I add on. So I think I will start by, I don't want to cut this curve yet, and I think I'll make it white just because I have lots of white to play with. And I think what I'm envisioning is a curve, and then it will end up being straight here, and I'll go as far down here as I can. And I want some narrow strips of color here, not necessarily the full length, maybe staggered even, and then in this section have narrow strips coming this direction from the edge. I don't know what it's going to look like. Obviously I have to press this baby. So I'm going to get some white so I have something to work with here, and I'll cut a piece that is longer than this so that I've got plenty to work with the curve and as I add in strips here. All right, I have my strip of white here and my gray curve strip. I've also brought my bag that has all my scraps for my Kawandi, and so I've got a bag full of colorful scraps. I'm going to, for the moment, just do solids, but of course you could also use prints to good effect. For colors, I wanted to show you this photo I found of flowers. I found this on Facebook, and I apologize, I did not apparently keep who posted the photo, but this is kind of the color scheme I want to go for. Pinks and oranges and sort of orangey reds and golds. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about at this point, and we'll see how much I can drum up with those colors. So my first step is going to be to cut some spots in here, and I want to give this enough room that I can sort of determine, at least to a certain extent, where those strips are going to be, and I think I want them to be around here. Now this is plenty long, so that if I get it in approximately the correct place, when I go to cut this curve, I'll be able to place it more accurately. So I want them to be about here. I'm just going to do a quick little mark. Maybe start here, and depending on the width of the strips, this could either take in or expand the width of this. The wider the strip, the wider that's going to become. The narrower it may pull it in if it's less than an inch. Okay, less than an inch cut. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I don't want the strips to go all the way through here. I may get to that point. Try that out sometime, but at this point, I just want it to be, I don't even know if I want it even going across here. So what I'm going, this is not the most efficient way to do it. Ordinarily, I could do a strip set and then just slice them. I could do that, except that I want to use different colors, I think. Or I could do the same color for a stretch. And then another color. All right, I'm going to do 2 or 3 strip sets that are plenty wide this way. So color, white strip, color strip. And then that will give me the ability to shift and make them different lengths as they cut into this. So I will do that first. And that means I need to go diving for fabric. So I am headed off to do that, find the colors I want to use, and get a white strip I could make strip sets from. Here are some in that color scheme that I have pulled out of the bag. Tend to get a little mangled in the bag. I think I'm going to start off with this piece, although I love the orange and gold, don't get me wrong. And maybe I'll start out with these 2 to begin with, and I'll make a couple of strip sets and be back. And I have a few strip sets here. This strip was so narrow to begin with. I wanted to have more room to play because it's going to be cut like this. That was going to make more narrower strip than I wanted to have to play with. So I just cut them this way and added a narrower white on there. I may end up not needing all that white, but I'd rather have it and not need it. I want to cut some strips from this, and I'll need to decide if I want them all to be the same width, if I want them varying. And oh, another note I'll make, I thought about doing a curve here, which might be kind of interesting. Although I like the contrast of the straight strips when there's a lot of curve going that way. If I had done this curve, because I envision these as being pretty narrow strips, the curve would essentially go away. It might look a little slanted, but you wouldn't get the effect of that curve. So I opted to save me that work and just do straight seams. Now, if I cut this at 1 inch, it will give me a 1/2 inch piece, which is this much finished. And I think that's probably going to be all right. So I'm going to start out with the same width, and I'm going to cut just a couple of each. So I've cut 1 inch. Now I'm going to slide over to 2 inches here, so that I have 2 1-inch cuts from this strip, and do the same on this. Oh, I added in this third color, by the way. I guess I didn't say that on camera. I decided I wanted a third color in there because I live my life in threes, sort of. Okay. And again, I could be cutting these at varying widths, and maybe at another point in this I will, but for now, just going to cut a couple 1 inch wide. Didn't know if I was going to get more than one out of these strips, and it looks like I am going to. That's a good thing. All right, going to clean this up and be back, and we'll take a look at how we might want to do this. While I'm here, when I say clean up, I mean I'm going to use, this is a Tenwin. It's a crumb vacuum, tabletop crumb vacuum. They don't sponsor me. I don't get anything for this, but it's very useful for picking up that little scruffy stuff that is hard to just wipe off with your hand. Sorry about the noise. Anyway, that's an aside. So now I have these strips, and I want, oops, now that I have it in my head, it's going to be that way, then it's going to have to be that way. And then here's my white strip. I'm endeavoring to not burn my hand on my iron off screen here. So I am wanting these to go at various distances into this white. And they're going to be half this width, remember? So now I can think about, first of all, the order of these colors. Do I care? I'm not sure that I do. I mean, it could go from lighter to darker, but you know, what's lighter and what's darker for some of these fabrics. The other thing is, if I want these to kind of follow that curve so that they're different distances from here. And I think I do. Let me flip this on top, get a better visual. I think I do want to do that. So, and then how far apart do I want them? All of that. But I think I want them fairly close together. Maybe a little more clear, and they don't have to be, I mean, this doesn't need to be symmetrical. It may end up not being symmetrical by the time I get around to inserting them anyway. So let's see, I've got, what, about a 1/2 inch in between, roughly. So now I am going to, I've got plenty of room over here. So now I'm going to do my slices and insert those. Then I will be back. Again, I've mentioned this, haven't I? You can have different widths here and different distances apart. Okay. You all got that without me saying it, didn't you? Okay. Oh, I'm seeing it. All right, never mind. I'm pretty happy with this. I don't know if it's going to end up being this wide in the end, but I've got some leeway there if I want. I even have some leeway down here. I'm torn. Well, it's going to be taken up, of course, with the seams, so. All right. I am going to go down to where I have a larger cutting space in order to cut this curve, which is quite long. And y'all have seen me do curves before. So I will just put a link down in the description to my curve video if you haven't seen me doing curves before. I forgot to show you that on the back I pressed these seams toward the darker so they butt up against each other very nicely. Of course, we've got the bulk of the seams there. When I was doing this curve, I was very careful, especially here, to not be tugging at all on this strip as I was moving it over to lay it down. I've got nothing but bias here. And on the narrower strips, it's easier to stretch it out. So I was very careful. I catch myself sometimes, even if I'm just, lifting it over. I pull up any fabric that I've already done here so it's not dragging on that, and I make sure that what's down here is also not dragging on it, and that as I'm coming around to curve, I am not inadvertently doing any stretching. I catch myself, even if I'm trying to be careful on moving it over, that I'm not also just stretching it the various little bits. So I was very conscious of that. I think it turned out okay because I marked the beginning and the end and they were perfectly matched up. So I'm willing to take a risk to show you how it how it presses out here. And I want to go ahead of it and kind of move it over because I don't want the weight of the iron to be stretching it out either. So I'm pressing, not ironing it. That curve came out well. I'm happy with that. Let's see what happens with this little baby here. And that turned out well. All right, I'm quite pleased with that. Didn't appear to be any stretching, maybe a little bit there. But overall, I think that curve came out quite well. And I like the effect. Let me move this so it's not gray on gray. And I like this effect that because I have these staggered, it looks like it's sort of pushing the gray away. Now I have very little leeway here for another seam. So when I sew on whatever strip I'm going to be putting on here, it's going to be, I'm going to do a narrower seam than I might otherwise. I'm going to trim off this end here if I can find my tools. Give myself plenty, but I have another piece to do something with. Also, when I cut that curve, I ended up with some new curved pieces that I can use somewhere in this piece, whatever it ends up being. So that goes into the stash of things. And now I need to think about what I want to do here. And I'm envisioning this to be a vertical piece. So I want a strip of color down here, or I could have just plain white down here and some strip colors up there. This doesn't look entirely straight down here, does it? So I may have a little bit of a curve in that, which is fine. I'm not worried about that because if I wanted to make this straight, I would have to, I don't know if you can see that little bit of curve there, but if I were to trim that straight from here, then I lose too much up there in this very narrow spot that I have there, this very narrow channel. So I'm not worried that this is going to spread out a little bit down here. And I think, am I going to, I could cut another curve into this gray, but that's not what I had in my mind, so of course I can't picture it now. So I am going to do some strips over here. I just have to decide which colors I want to use. Do I want to use the same family, or do I want to use the oranges? I think I'm tending toward the oranges, or at least have some orange in it, even if I do strips of this. And I certainly do have a strip that I could use of this, and then have a punch of orange. And I just love this combination of colors. I've never used it, but I just love it. So that's what I'm going to do, and they aren't going to be full length strips of color. They're going to have some white on them, and they're probably also going to be quite narrow. And I may do, say, 3 strips. Maybe. Oh, sorry, when I added that in, it threw the color off the camera. It's just blitzing out. Okay, so what if I did, I have shorter strips of these. I like that, I think, with just one pop of color in there. I'm not sure what pop that's going to be. This orange, I'm sorry. It's going to make the camera unhappy. This see if I can get it focused on that white. Nope, doesn't care. Nope, I think I want yellow in there. So that's up next. I'm going to cut some strips. Sorry, froggy throat day. Cut some strips. This I think will be in the middle, and I'll be adding some white onto the ends in order to stagger them. But I'm first going to do one strip that I think I want white down here, and then this color will start, like, I don't know, there somewhere. We'll see. That's my plan at the moment. Here we have the first strip. I had not intended it to be this wide in the end, but I'm not sure that I don't kind of like it. One thing I do want to do is to straighten this edge so that it's perpendicular to this. It looks like it's just enough off that it's going to bug me. If it were more off or less off, it would bug me less. But I do want to straighten it to be perpendicular with that, which means this particular seam is not going to be perfectly straight. I'm okay with that. I just need, in the end, this piece to be straight. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll probably go downstairs where I have a longer table. And then I will think about where I want this gold strip to be and how wide I want it to be. And for that matter, how wide I want this to be. Second strip is on. I don't want these to be the same width, and these two aren't going to be because the red one, of course, tapers a bit there when I straightened out the seam. So I want this to be narrower. If they're the same width, then I don't know. It's just not what I was picturing, I suppose. You could do the same width, but I think I want this to be just that pop of gold. So I'm going to trim this strip a bit, and then I will do a strip of the, what was the other color we're doing? I don't know, one of these in the red, purplish, pink family. So I'll do that, and then I'll come back and show you where we're at with that. And here we have the finish of the strips. I don't know yet how wide this will be. I'll determine that once we decide what to do with this block. And I'm quite happy with it. It actually turned out fairly close to what I imagined, although I had imagined all the strips being fairly narrow. But I'm pretty happy with this, actually. And I will put a picture here at the end of what the whole thing looks like, since it won't all fit on the camera here. And I'm almost thinking that if this ends up being a quilt, I know whom it is for. That's always fun. That's it for this week. I will probably not do a video next week. I will be at a retreat. My machine and I will be gone. So don't expect one. I may post something short, but you should not expect one next week. But the following week we'll be back. And that will have given me some time to think about what else I want to try out in this exploration. I love the colors. I like that I'm using some of the curves that were from another project, leftovers from another project. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this. Let me know what you think and what you think about this color scheme. As I was doing this, I was thinking, I should have put a black and white stripe in here. I haven't conceived of circles yet, though, so we're good with that. So that's it for this week. Won't see you next week, but hopefully the week after that I will see you. And in the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.